You are looking at the Jubilee timeline, and this section is going to be filled in. And you are here, fall 2021, at the time of this video recording. The next Jubilee year is very close, and that's the purpose of this video. And in this video, I will be dating the year of the next Jubilee. To produce my recent video that I just recently published, I spent about 2 months studying the book of Ezekiel. And for those familiar with my work, the prophecies of Ezekiel has been and are a very primary emphasis of mine. As I said in my last video, you are here. You are inside this prophecy of Ezekiel 33:21 through Ezekiel 39:29. Several of these prophecies have been fulfilled, which I documented in my last video. In my video, I created the spreadsheet that you're looking at right now, and I grouped Ezekiel's prophecies by the dates they were given. I then audited his prophecies which have been fulfilled and which have yet to be fulfilled. All prophecies in blue are yet to be fulfilled. They are unfulfilled prophecies of Ezekiel. And this prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 40 through 48 is very important. And what I understood from the notes of my Hebrew Roots Study Bible is that this prophecy of Ezekiel 40 verse 1 through the end of chapter 48 was given to Ezekiel on Yom Kippur on a Jubilee year. Here is my Hebraic Roots Bible, a literal translation. I recommend this Bible. I'll put a link to it in the description. I'm going to open up to Ezekiel chapter 40. Right here, Ezekiel chapter 40, and you can read, "In the 25th year of our exile, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th of the month, in the 14th of the year after the city was struck," and as you can see, number 3 right here, and you go to note number 3, the phrase "beginning of the year" is Rosh Hashanah. The only time Rosh Hashanah is on the 10th day of the 7th month is a Jubilee, per Leviticus 25, verse 9. So that's how I knew that this was speaking of a Jubilee year. So after I published this recent video, I started thinking about the fall festivals of Yahweh and wondered again this year if this Yom Kippur is going to be a Jubilee or not, and how could we know, and when will the next Jubilee year be? I've tried several times on my channel to try to identify the year of Jubilee using current events in the last 100 years, which wasn't successful. But I went back to this prophecy of Ezekiel 40 verse 1, and then it dawned on me that given Ezekiel's Jubilee prophecy of Ezekiel 40 verse 1 is anchored to the year of the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem, I could easily date the Jubilee year that Ezekiel received the vision, considering it is the 14th year after the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. It is also the 25th year of their captivity of King Jehoiakim and Ezekiel, and both events have been documented in history and have been dated by scholars. So we can find out the date of Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1, which is the beginning of the Jubilee year, by dating it back to the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem. And by dating the Jubilee year, we can restore the Jubilee count just by counting the Jubilee Shemitah Cycle from the Jubilee year that Ezekiel received his prophecy to the next upcoming Jubilee. It sounds extremely simple, and it is, and I will do so in this video. Hallelujah. But there is more to it. The count needs to be verified, which I will also do. And before I do, I want to provide some caution because the information in this video is going to cause your end time paradigm to shift. You will no longer interpret prophecy the same after watching and understanding this video and when the next Jubilee year is. The information in this video is going to impact your entire outlook on your current life. I'm Brother Nicholas James Vanderlane, and today is the 31st day of the 6th month. It's the day of the season of fall, September 18th, 2021, and tomorrow is going to be the first day of the 7th month, so it's going to be Yom Teruah, and it's also Rosh Hashanah, head of the year on the civil calendar year. And this video is titled The Jubilee Shemitah Cycle Restored, the 70th year of Jubilee and the last trump. Also, 70 times 7 is the keys to the kingdom of heaven. So pause the video and get a pen and paper because you need to take notes. Take notes and pay attention because you do not want to miss out on how to restore the year of Jubilee, and also identify the 70th Jubilee, which is when the kingdom of heaven is going to come to earth. And the kingdom of heaven coming to earth is when King Yeshua returns in the clouds with his myriads of his holy ones, setting up and establishing his kingdom here on earth. The keys to the kingdom of heaven, identified and interpreted. During the process of constructing this video on restoring the Jubilee, by the spirit of wisdom and understanding, I was given the ability to identify and interpret Messiah Yeshua's prophecy of the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Hallelujah. So regarding the keys to the kingdom of heaven, to identify them and interpret them, in Matthew chapter 16, Messiah Yeshua said he was going to give Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And I'm going to identify where Messiah Yeshua gave Peter the keys and what the keys are. And I believe that the keys to the kingdom of heaven is when Messiah Yeshua cryptically tells Peter the exact timing of his return, which I deciphered and I'm sharing with you in this video. The keys to the kingdom of heaven is to understand when the kingdom of heaven is going to come to earth, i.e. when Messiah Yeshua is going to come to earth, which will happen at the last trump. Now you should know that the trump of Jubilee is a trump. So here I am in Matthew chapter 16, and here is where Peter professes Messiah Yeshua as the Messiah, the Son of the living Eloah. And then Yeshua answered him and said unto him, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I also say unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my congregation, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Then charged he his disciples that they should tell no man that he was Yeshua the Messiah. So here we see that Messiah Yeshua said he will give Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And then where does he do this? It certainly wasn't in the next verse. It wasn't down here when he rebuked Peter. It wasn't down here when he was told to take up his cross. But he did talk about the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels. And then he shall reward every man according to his works. Verily I say unto you that there shall be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And then the next chapter in Matthew 17, we see the transfiguration event. We see Messiah Yeshua heals a boy with a demon. We see Messiah Yeshua predict his death and resurrection. We see the temple tax, that the children are free. And then here in chapter 18, the disciples asked Yeshua about being the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So we hear about it, and you have to be as a child, which means that you have to make Elohim your father to become like a child. He has to become your father. Then he talks about temptations and trespasses, the parable of the lost sheep, a brother who sins. And then we get down here to the parable of the unforgiving servant. So you need to recognize that since Messiah Yeshua promised to give Peter the keys, he has yet to give Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Then Peter came to him, Yeshua, and said, Master, how oft should my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Yeshua said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. And then Messiah Yeshua then goes on to talk about the kingdom of heaven. And so here is what I identified through the spirit of wisdom and understanding, hallelujah, if I be correct, that this is the keys to the kingdom of heaven, knowing when the kingdom is going to come to earth. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Eloah is going to come to earth. That's what we need to know. So when is it going to come to earth? 70 times 7. And that right there is talking about the 70th Jubilee, as I'll now explain to you. Again, Then came Peter to Yeshua and said, Master, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times? And Yeshua said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. So when Peter asks about being forgiven 7 times, there's 7 weeks in a 49-year Shemitah cycle. And the following year is the 50th year of Jubilee, when all debts are forgiven. So here we see 7 times, which is a Shemitah cycle. And here's how the Shemitah cycle works. It's a week of years, and there's 7 weeks. Thus 7 times 7 equals 49 years. And the 50th year is the Jubilee year, and its forgiveness and debts are canceled. It's a year of forgiveness and the cancellation of debts. So Peter asked regarding how often should he forgive his brother, 7 times. That could be interpreted as 1 Jubilee cycle, but Yeshua says no, 70 times the 7, which is 70 Jubilees. And those 70 Jubilees would be the timing from when the Israelites entered into the promised land of Canaan, and that's when the Shemitah cycle and the Jubilee cycle began, up until his return when the 70th Jubilee happens. And I'm telling you now that the next Jubilee is the 70th Jubilee, and we're very close to it, and I'm going to show you how to count it on your own in this video. So you can test it and do the math for yourself. And also in Acts 1, it's very important regarding the kingdom of Eloah. So during those 40 days, Messiah Yeshua was speaking on things pertaining to the kingdom of Eloah. And then down here in the ascension, when they, the disciples, therefore were come together, and they asked him, saying, Master, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? So the disciples were expecting Yeshua to come and restore the kingdom back to Israel. It was under Roman occupation and Edomite Jewry occupation. So they wanted the kingdom of Israel restored, and they thought that it was going to happen, and then he died, he resurrected, he was seen for 40 days, and then they came to him, and the first thing that they said in Acts 1, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? And he said unto them, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father hath put in his own power, but ye shall receive power after the Ruach HaKodesh has come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem and in Judea and in Samaria unto the uttermost part of the earth. So it wasn't for the disciples to know, but it's for you to know, because I'm breaking down to you how to restore the Jubilee and count the Jubilee and count 70 Jubilees when the kingdom of heaven is going to come to earth. And when Yeshua had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken up, a cloud received him out of their sight, and while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? The same Yeshua which is taken up from you into heaven shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. So just as I read before, the Son of Man, he's going to come back in the clouds with his holy ones, his set apart ones, to establish the kingdom of heaven, to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. And that's what we're supposed to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, the Father's kingdom, the kingdom of Eloah, the kingdom of heaven to come, and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we're praying for his kingdom to come to earth. And so that's what this 70 times 7 is all about. It's 70 Jubilees, and counting that, and that finding that 70th Jubilee is when the kingdom of heaven is going to come to earth. So with the restored Jubilee Shemitah cycle, we will now be able to count the 70 Jubilees to know when the kingdom of heaven is going to come to earth at the last trump, which is the 70th trump of Jubilee, which is when Messiah Yeshua is going to forgive the debts of true Israel and restore the kingdom and rule and reign here on earth. So the 70 times 7, which is 70 Jubilee Shemitah cycles that Messiah Yeshua told Peter, I also understand to be the 70 weeks of Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. As a week can be a group of 7 days, a group of 7 years, which is a Shemitah, or a group of 7 weeks of years, which would be a 49-year Shemitah cycle. So 70 weeks that Daniel says were determined of Daniel chapter 9 verse 24 is talking about the same 70 Jubilee cycles that Messiah Yeshua preached about, which are the keys to the kingdom of heaven, which I'm sharing with you now. So I want to take a look at Daniel chapter 9 regarding his prayer and where the 70 weeks are determined. Important to understand in Daniel's prayer of Daniel chapter 9, it appears that he is praying on a Yom Kippur. It could very well be a Yom Kippur Jubilee. I haven't gone back and tried to date the date of this prayer. But why I say that this is probably on Yom Kippur is because he's making supplication and prayer with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. And that is all themed with Yom Kippur, fasting and sackcloth. And then when he prays, he intercedes for Judah and Jerusalem, and he talks about how they have sinned and committed iniquity and have done wickedly and have rebelled even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgments. Neither have we hearkened unto thy servants the prophets, which spake in thy name to our kings and our princes and our fathers and to all the land of the people and all the people of the land. And then he goes on and asks for forgiveness here, and then for great mercies and to forgive. And that's what the theme of the Jubilee is about. It's about forgiving and canceling that debt. And so it says here that 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make the end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity. Making reconciliation for iniquity is atonement. It's covering. It's Yom Kippur on a Jubilee, that this is when it's going to happen. And then to bring in everlasting righteousness, which is the millennial reign, when Messiah Yeshua's kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, is going to come to earth, on earth, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy and to anoint the most holy. So I believe that verse 24 is separate from verse 25, and this is why it has confused scholars for all of these ages, because they think that these things are both together. But these 70 weeks, I understand it could be 70 Shemitah cycles, because again, a 7 can be a group of 7 weeks of years. So that's when it says 70 times 7 of Daniel 24. It is talking about the same 70 Jubilee cycles that Messiah Yeshua talked about. When forgiveness is made. How often should I forgive? 70 times 7. And again, in this video, I'm going to show you how close we are to the 70th year of Jubilee. And before I date the year of Jubilee of Ezekiel 40 verse 1 and count the Shemitah cycles to the next Jubilee, I first want to clarify for some people the length of a Jubilee Shemitah cycle so we can count the years correctly without error. So yes, the Jubilee year is the 50th year. And in my video from about a year ago, I explained from the book of Jubilees that even though the Jubilee is the 50th year, the Shemitah cycle on which the Jubilee is counted is only consecutive 49-year-long periods and not consecutive 50-year-long periods, as I will demonstrate. So again, here's the Shemitah cycle. It's 49 years. Here's the Sabbath year, why it's called the Shemitah. It's the year of release. And here is the wrong cycle. Many scholars have wrongly supposed that the 50th year Jubilee is a divider year or a buffer year of the 49-year cycle. So you see 49 years right here, then you see the 50th year, then you see another 49 years, then you see a 50th year. They think that when you count the Shemitah Jubilee cycle, that it's 50 years plus 50 years plus 50 years plus 50 years plus 50 years. But this counting period is wrong. This is not how you would reckon the years to count, to understand, to find the 70th Jubilee when the kingdom of heaven is going to come to earth. This is wrong. You will not be able to count the 70th Jubilee by using 50-year blocks. And I'm going to go ahead and prove it to you from the book of Jubilees using simple math to understand that a Jubilee is a repeated 49-year cycle in length and not repeated 50-year cycles in length, as is confused by many. So Noah lived 950 years, according to Jubilees chapter 10, verse 15 through 16. And Noah slept with his fathers and was buried on Mount Lubar in the land of Ararat 950 years. He completed in his life 19 Jubilees and 2 weeks and 5 years. So if you were to assume that a Jubilee is 50 years long, 19 Jubilees times 50 equals 950 years. 2 2 weeks of years is 14 years, and then 5 years. So 950 years plus 14 years plus 5 years is 969 years, not the 950 years that the text says. Now, if you were to assume a Jubilee is 49 years, 19 times 49 is 931 years, plus the 14 years, plus the 5 years, it equals 950 years as the text says. In Jubilees chapter 23, verse 8 to 9, Abraham lived 175 years, and Abraham lived 3 Jubilees and 4 weeks of years, 175 years, and completed all the days of his life, being old and full of days. So assuming that a Jubilee is 50 years long, 3 times 50 is 150, plus 4 weeks, which is 4 times 7 years, which is 28 years, 150 plus 28 equals 178 years. Not 175 years as the text says. But if you were to use a 49-year Jubilee, 3 times 49 is 147, plus the 28 years equals 175 years, just like the text says. And lastly, Jubilees chapter 45, verse 13, and Jacob, Israel, lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, and all the days which he lived were 3 Jubilees, 147 years. So 3 times 50 is 150 years, not 147 as the text says. 3 times 49 is 147 years, just as the text says. So this is the most easiest one. You could also go 147 divided by 3 Jubilees. It equals 49 years per Jubilee. So that is how you would count the Jubilee cycle. It's 49 years in length, which is the length of the Shemitah cycle, not 50 years in length. So this means that the 50th year Jubilee is the first year of the next 49-year Shemitah cycle. So here you have a 49-year Shemitah cycle, and the 50th year is the first year of the next cycle. That means that the first year of the 49-year cycle is a Jubilee year, and I'll demonstrate from the book of Joshua in this video that the very first year the Israelites entered into the land and the Shmita Count started, it was a Jubilee. It was when in their battle of Jericho, they were called to blow the Jubilee horn. And that's what the priests were carrying, were the Jubilee horn. They had 7 of them, very similar like the 7 trumpets of Revelation. So the correct Jubilee Shemitah cycle count, the Jubilee cycle length is actually the counting of the 49-year Shemitah cycle. 49 years plus 49 years plus 49 years plus 49 years plus 49 years. So now that we understand this, we can now count the 70th Jubilee correctly to understand when the kingdom of heaven is going to be coming to earth. So now that we've come to understanding of how long the length of a Jubilee year is, now let's go ahead and take a look at the Jubilee Shemitah cycle. The year of Jubilee is first read about in Leviticus chapter 25, and thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee. 7 times 7 years, and the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. Then thou shalt cause the trumpet, remember the last trump, the trumpet of Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a Jubilee unto you, and you shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. A Jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. You shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather grapes of the vine undressed, for it is the Jubilee. It shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. So, regarding this Jubilee, it's important to understand here the agricultural clues onto what year pattern the Jubilee starts. The first thing is they're instructed to do that ye shall not sow. So when you would sow would be in the late fall, and in the winter is when you would sow your grain in the field. Neither shall you reap, which is in springtime and summer, and that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed, which the gathering of grapes happens in the summertime. The third day of the fifth month is the festival of new wine, so grapes start right around that fifth month, which is in the middle of summer, and go all the way up until even now. For it is the Jubilee, it shall be holy unto you, ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. So that appears to be that the Jubilee starts on the civil calendar, not on the ecclesiastical calendar. And that word for Jubilee is Yobel, and it means ram's horn, trumpet, cornet, Jubilee year. And apparently they say that it comes from the blast of a horn, from its continuous sound, specifically the signal of the silver trumpets. Hence, the instrument itself and the festival thus induced the Jubilee, ram's horn, and trumpet festival. And here are the 27 times in 25 verses that the word Jubilee is found. We see it here in Exodus 19 at Mount Sinai, and there shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be of beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet, or when the Jubilee, that word is Jubilee, when the Jubilee soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. And that's what happened in the 15th or the 16th day of the third month at Mount Sinai. And then here you see Leviticus 25. It's also mentioned in Leviticus 27, Numbers 36, and then Joshua chapter 6. We see the priests that when they're marching around Jericho, they're instructed that the 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of Jubilee trumpets. Here it's translated as ram's horns, but it's Jubilee is the word, Jubilee trumpets. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, like a Shemitah cycle, and the priest shall blow with the trumpets. So they blew with the trumpets 5 times. The word Jubilee is mentioned to show that it was a type of the Jubilee year, but this was actually the beginning of the Shmita Count, because the Shemitah Cycle began in the first year when the Israelites entered Canaan. And they entered into Canaan on the 10th day of the first month, and then the men circumcised themselves. Then they celebrated the feast of Passover, and then the next account that we get is of the Israelites marching around Jericho with the Jubilees horns and the Jubilee blasts going off. So again, the Jubilee Shemitah Cycle began the year that the Israelites crossed the Jordan into Canaan, into the Promised Land. And the Jubilee Shemitah Cycle has never stopped. Despite the Israelites being evicted from their land, that cycle is still going on and being counted and reckoned in heaven. And no, the Jewish modern state of Israel is not the fulfillment of the true Israelites returning, as I proved in my video a week ago. They are the fulfillment of Edom inhabiting the land. So again, the Jubilee Shemitah Cycle has never stopped, despite the real Israelites being evicted from their land. So from the day that they entered into the land, you count 70 Jubilees, and that's going to be when the kingdom of heaven is going to come to earth and Elohim's going to restore the kingdom to Israel. There have been 69 Jubilees prior to 2021, and the 70th Jubilee is in a few years, as I'm going to prove to you how to count for yourselves. Now, some might say, Nick, we can just take the date when the Israelites crossed into the Promised Land and count the Jubilee cycle that way, and sure, you could, but the problem with that is scholars can't agree on the date of the Exodus. There's an early date of the Exodus and a late date of the Exodus that are separated by a couple hundred years. And even then, scholars in the early date have a differences of 1 to 6 to 10 to 15 years difference in their dating. So there's no solid date to work from. So counting from this debated date, sure, you could do it this way, but there's, like I said, there's 20 different dates. So counting here isn't reliable. And this is why identifying the Jubilee year of Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1, which is anchored to the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem, is a more reliable date because it is a more recent event. It's 600 to 800 years more recent than the Exodus and then the 40 years later when the Israelites entered the Promised Land, which means that there's less of a margin of error for scholars to get the date correct. And there are Neo-Babylonian tablets that document the destruction of Jerusalem, And there's also the Babylonian Chronicles, which chronicle the earlier captivity and siege of Jerusalem and the captivity of King Jehoiakim. So using Ezekiel 40 verse 1 and the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem to find the Jubilee year of Ezekiel 40 verse 1 is a more reliable source than going 600 to 800 years back of having to chronologize and reconcile history. So by dating the Jubilee year based off the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem, we can then get the date for the Jubilee here of Ezekiel 40 verse 1 and count the Jubilee Shemitah Cycle backwards to when they entered the promised land to see if it reconciles with scholars' work, which it actually does in some cases. And after we have identified and verified which scholars got it correctly and dated the Israelites' entrance into Canaan, we can then count the 49-year Jubilee Shemitah Cycle forward, and it will sync with the Jubilee in Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1, obviously because they're synced together, and then we can know almost for certain when the next Jubilee year is. So as I said, there's only one recorded Jubilee year in the scriptures, and it's Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1. And many people think that Messiah Yeshua fulfilled the Jubilee year when he read a partial excerpt of Isaiah 61 in the synagogue at Nazareth. He had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of Yahweh is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of Yahweh." And he closed the book, and he gave it again to the minister, and sat down, and all the eyes of them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. And he began to say unto them, "This day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears." And so what was interesting is a lot of people think that he was proclaiming the year of Jubilee here, but we know that the year of Jubilee has to be proclaimed with a shout. It's going to be proclaimed with the shout of the voice of an archangel. It's going to be proclaimed with the Jubilee shout, the Jubilee trump. And in Isaiah chapter 61, and this is where Messiah Yeshua stopped reading right here. He did not, "And the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint them that mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes." Remember, Daniel, sackcloth and ashes was what he fasted and prayed in. Sackcloth and ashes. So they're going to get beauty for ashes. They're going to get the oil of joy for mourning. And what do you do on Yom Kippur? You mourn over your sin. The garments of praise for the spirit of heaviness. Daniel was wearing sackcloth. They're going to get the garments of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that dark clothing. Black clothing is the spirit of heaviness. That they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh, that he might be glorified. So these people are going to be planted in the land. And they're going to get the land back. They're going to build the old waste places, and they shall raise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many generations. And then you could read about that. But this is where he left off. It looks like Messiah Yeshua paused on the Jubilee, because that's when the vengeance is going to happen, possibly on the year of Jubilee. So again, the reason why I say that Luke chapter 4, was not proclaiming a year of Jubilee, because the year of Jubilee is on Yom Kippur, the 10th day of the 7th month, which means that Messiah Yeshua would have had to travel from Nazareth to Jerusalem for the Feast of Sukkot on the 15th day of the 7th month. So he would have had like 4 days to arrive into Jerusalem for the festival of Sukkot and build a sukkah and all of that. And instead, after he preached this message here in Nazareth, he then went around Galilee and preached around Galilee. So there's no record that he went to Jerusalem. He didn't go to Jerusalem. He went down around Galilee and preaching in the local synagogues there. So I don't think that it was a Yom Kippur, and therefore it wasn't a Jubilee. So the only documented location of the year of Jubilee is Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 1. In the 25th year, which is the 25th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was smitten. And when the city, that means after the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. I want to draw your attention to right here, in the beginning of the year. The Hebrew for beginning of the year right there is Barosh Hashanah, which is the head of a year. Rosh Hashanah. And it's on the 10th day of the month. And the only time that the 10th day of the month is the head of the year is when it's the head of a Jubilee year. As earlier I read Leviticus chapter 25. It says that the Jubilee year starts on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which is the 10th day of the 7th month. And that Jubilee year of Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 1, is anchored to two events. The 25th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, and also the 14th year after the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem. In the 25th year of the captivity, and in the 14th year after that the city was smitten. So the city was smitten in 587 or 586 BC, according to the majority of scholars out there. So there's a 1 year difference of this dating, and that's the benefit of using Ezekiel 40 verse 1 to find the Jubilee of Ezekiel 40 verse 1, because there's only a 1 year difference between the date when Jerusalem was destroyed, while if you were to use the year that they entered the promised land, when the Shmita Count started based on the Exodus, well, you have an early date Exodus and a late date Exodus of a couple of 100 years difference. So this is a more reliable date to define and find the Jubilee. And then from that Jubilee of Ezekiel 40 verse 1, we can count the Jubilee backwards to when the Israelites entered the promised land and the Shemitah Cycle began, and then we can see what scholars have that date correct and have the date of the Exodus correct and everything else. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at chronologist work of Edwin Thiel and also of Roger Young. Edwin Thiel had the siege of Jerusalem at 586 BC. And then Roger Young, he corrected a small error in Edwin Thiel's work. That's what he understands. And he published his analysis of the destruction of Jerusalem as 587 BC. And he based his on details in the Bible, specifically Ezekiel, also the Neo-Babylonian sources for related events. And regarding the 25th year of the captivity, the first year of the captivity of King Jehoiakim, that was in the Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle, which provides information about the siege of Jerusalem in 597 BC. So there were two sieges of Jerusalem, one in 597 BC, which is when King Jehoiakim became captive along with Ezekiel and 3,000 to 10,000 other Judahites. And then there was a second siege, which later happened in 588 BC and ended with the destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BC or 586 BC, depending on chronologize and recognize the history there. I'll be taking a look at the chronology of Edwin Thiel and Roger Young's work in this video. And it's important to note, and it's important for you guys to know, that in researching the different events of the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem, I first examined and used Edwin Thiel's summer of 586 BC and his entrance into Canaan of spring 1406 BC. After I looked at that, I then became familiar with Roger Young's work, who corrected Thiel's, a small error of Thiel's, and came to the conclusion of the summer of 587 BC for the destruction of Jerusalem. And as I was getting familiar with Roger Young, who I was never familiar with before, I found a work of his back in 2004 where he actually used Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1 to identify the Jubilee year. And he counted the Jubilee Shemitah Cycle backwards to when the Israelites entered the land, and he dated it at spring 1406 BC. So I do want to take the time to recognize Roger Young's exceptional work in restoring the Jubilee Shemitah count back to the Israelites entering in based on Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1. And I also want to note and to emphasize that my understanding of restoring the Jubilee Shemitah count based on Ezekiel 40 verse 1 was totally independent of and prior to my knowledge of Roger Young's work. So I credit the spirit of wisdom and understanding for guiding me into the truth of identifying the Jubilee Shemitah count. So hallelujah, all praise to Yah. And also I want to note that while Roger Young's work is backwards facing. He's restoring history and providing validity to the historicity of the Bible. I have yet to see a paper published by Roger Young that focuses on the next Jubilee, which is the 70th Jubilee. And the basis of me restoring the Jubilee is the desire to know when the next Jubilee is facing forward. So I want to make sure that there's a distinction there that's clear and everything is correct, so you understand that I didn't take it from Roger Young, but I came to an independent understanding. So hallelujah, it's independently done. This was confirmation when I came across Roger's work. I'm also going to be examining chronologist and Egyptologist David Rohl's work. He provided new chronology regarding the date of the Exodus, and he has really challenged a lot of Egyptologists' work regarding the dating of the Exodus. He puts the Exodus dating at 1447 BCE. So now I'm going to compare the dates of the scholars here on the dates that they have for the Exodus, the dates that they have for the entry into Canaan, and then also for the fall of Jerusalem. And these years are civil sectarian calendar years, which means that they start in the fall, the 7th month, and they go 7th month to the 6th month, not going 1st through 12th. So the years begin in the fall, in the 7th month. So David Rohl, he has the Exodus in spring 1447 BC. That would be the year of the fall 1448 through 1447 BC. He had the entry into Canaan 40 years later in the spring of 1407, so that would be year 1408 through 1407 BC. Roger Young had the Exodus in 1446 BC in the spring. He had the entry into Canaan in the spring 1406 BC. So that means that year 1407 to 1406 BC is the year that the Israelites entered into the land of Canaan according to Roger Young's. And then he had the fall of Jerusalem in the summer of 587 BC. So that would be year 588 to 587 BC, because the fall happened in the 10th day of the 5th month, and that year started that calendar year started on the first day of the 7th month. So it was 588 to 587 BC. And then Edwin Thiel, the fall of Jerusalem happened in the summer of 586 BC, which means that would have been year 587 to 586 BC. So now I'm going to go ahead and put these on some spreadsheet charts, and we're going to take a look at the possible dates for the year of Jubilee. The Jubilee of Ezekiel 40 verse 1, I'm going to identify first. So here I am in my spreadsheet that I created, and column A is David Rohl's, column B is Roger Young, and column C is Edwin Thiel. Links for these spreadsheets can be found in the description below. And because David Rohl, I couldn't find his literature of where he dated the destruction of Jerusalem, I then based this on his 1447 BC Exodus. So according to Roger Young, he dated the fall of Jerusalem in 587 BC, so year 588 to 587. That means that the first year of the captivity would have been 598 to 597 BC. So in the 25th year, as you can see right here, of their captivity, according to Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1, and also in the 14th year after the destruction of Jerusalem, you have year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. In the 14th year after the destruction, 14th year after, which was also the 25th year, as you can see, there's 25. Year 1 is right here. So in the 25th year of their captivity, that's when the Jubilee year was. So it would have been 574 to 573 BC, according to Roger Young's chronology. Roger Young's chronology, he made one small correction in Edwin Thiel's chronology, and that's why Edwin Thiel, he had it at 586 BC, was the destruction of Jerusalem, so that year started in 587, and in the 14th year after, it would have been 573 to 572 BC. And then I'm attributing this to David Rolls, the other year, this year to David Rolls, based off of David Rolls' Exodus, again, which I'll show you in the next slide. So now it's time to search for the 70th Jubilee of the Promised Land. So we're going to have to go all the way back to when they entered into Canaan and count 70 Jubilees. So first we have to go back to that, and then we're going to count forward. So here I'm in my spreadsheet for the Restored Israelite Jubilee Shemitah Cycle. Again, column A is David Rolls' dates, column B is Roger Young's dates, and column C is Edwin Teal's dates. And David Roll would have had the Israelites coming in 1407 BC into Canaan, so that would have been the first year of the beginning of the Shemitah cycle. And as I explained, it was a type of the Jubilee, and you saw that how Joshua, they had the Jubilee horns when they took down Jericho. So the first Jubilee year is row number 2, but this is the first year of the cycle, counting the 49-year cycle, and then another 49-year cycle starting here, and another one starting here, and so forth. So here you can see the Jubilee of Ezekiel chapter 40, verse 1, where he received the prophecy that I just showed you in the previous spreadsheet. And then coming down here, we count down 70 Jubilees. This is the 70th Jubilee right here, which is the next Jubilee. According to David Roll's chronology of the Exodus, it would start Yom Kippur 2023 to Yom Teruah of 2024. According to Roger Young, dating of the destruction of Jerusalem and the siege of Jerusalem and the entrance of the Israelites into the Promised Land, the Jubilee would be on Yom Kippur 2024 and go through Yom Teruah 2025. And according to Edwin Teal's work, he dated the destruction of Jerusalem at 586 BC, and based on that date, the Jubilee would be on Yom Kippur 2025 and go to Yom Teruah 2026. So you might be saying, well, Nick, that's number 71. Well, again, the first row right here, this is not part of a Jubilee year. The first Jubilee happened in row 2 right here. This is when they entered the land, and the following year was the first Jubilee. So you have to subtract 1 from 71 right here, and this is the 70th Jubilee according to the reckoning of Ezekiel chapter 40 verse 1, the 70th Jubilee. So these are the 3 possible dates for the next and 70th year of Jubilee. Yom Kippur 2023, Yom Kippur 2024, or Yom Kippur 2025. We are in a window here, and there is a margin of error. So we'll have to wait and see what goes on. And not only will the next Jubilee be the 70th Jubilee since the Israelites entered the Promised Land, which is amazing, but it also might be the 120th Jubilee since Adam and the first year of the earth. And my guess is it probably is. So this could be the 120th Jubilee of the earth and of man. As in Genesis chapter 6 verse 3, and Yahweh said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So how about 120 years of Jubilees until he comes to earth to rule and reign as king, and his spirit will then no longer strive with man when he's ruling and reigning here on earth. According to the book of Jubilees, there have been 50 Jubilees from Adam to the Israelites' entrance into Canaan. So Jubilees chapter 50 verse 4, quote, wherefore I have ordained you for the years, weeks, and the years and the Jubilees. There are 49 Jubilees from the days of Adam until this day, and 1 week and 2 years. And there are yet 40 years to come for the learning of the commandments of Yahweh until they pass over into the land of Canaan, crossing the Jordan to the west. So, according to Jubilees 50, so if we add 40 years yet to come, and then we add the 2 years and 1 week, which is 9, that's 49 years, that's a Jubilee cycle. Then you have another 49 Jubilee cycles, so 49 plus 1 is 50. So up until they crossed into Canaan, When they crossed into Canaan, it was 50th Jubilee from the time that Adam and creation were. And I'll show you that now in the chart. And here is my spreadsheet for the creation Jubilee Shmita Count. And as you can count with me here, again, this is the first year of creation if we back count from when the date that they entered the promised land. If we back count from that Jubilee, we back count 50 Jubilees, it brings us to the beginning of the count here at 3058 BC. And here again you can count. This would have been the first Jubilee right here. And then if you count, there would have been 50 Jubilees here. It says 51 because again, this first row is not part of the Jubilee. This is the first year, but this is the first Jubilee. You come down here, it's 50 Jubilees here, just as the text said, and then you count down here those other 70 Jubilees that we just counted, and it's row 121, but it's really the 120th Jubilee from the first year of creation, which is absolutely amazing that this next Jubilee is going to be the 70th Jubilee from the Israelites entered the promised land, and also the 120th Jubilee from creation, which is absolutely amazing. So now you might be wondering, Nick, what do we do with these three dates, and what are the possible end time scenarios regarding the next and 70th year of Jubilee? So what we have here is three different dates and three different possibilities, and now we have to make our end time paradigm fit within this Jubilee cycle, because the Jubilee cycle is correct and it's been restored. So again, we know when the next Jubilee is, we just don't know who had it correct. Where there's a 3-year span, and again, it's it's going to take way too much work to review Roger Young or Edwin Teale's work. And who's to say that the BC years and the AD years are exactly correct? There could be a margin of error of like 1 year or 2 years that are not added to the year. So to our current Gregorian year of 2021. So looking at David Roll of 2023 to 2024, if this was the 70th year of Jubilee, that's it's almost 2 years away from now at the time of publishing this. So there's not enough time for Revelation 12's woman's escape or flight into the wilderness for 1,260 days, or also the 1,260 days of the two witnesses to happen before the Jubilee year. So basically, that doesn't provide the time period for that. So I expect things kind of be status quo, maybe the next several years, if this is the case, with birth pains continuing to intensify, and then Zion to travail on the Jubilee and give birth to all her children, which is the resurrection, rapture, and the start, and that would be the start of the 1,260 days. So that would come after the fact, not before. Same thing with Roger Young. That year, if the Jubilee started on Yom Kippur 2024, there's only 3 years from right now up to that 70th Jubilee. So again, like the previous scenario, there's not enough time left for the Revelation 12's woman's escape into the wilderness for 1,260 days, and also the 1,260 days of the two witnesses before the Jubilee year happens. So that might mean that those events would start on the Jubilee. That's a possible scenario. But again, just like the status quo, David Roll's things go status quo, this I'm not certain on it. The last scenario of Edwin Teale's Yom Kippur 2025 Jubilee, at the time of the filming of this video of Yom Kippur coming up in just around 11 days, Yom Kippur 2021, we would have 4 years, we would be 4 years away from the 70th Jubilee of Yom Kippur 2025. And unlike the previous two scenarios, this scenario allows enough time for the Revelation 12 woman's escape flight into the wilderness for 1,260 days to happen before the Jubilee, and also the 1,260 days of the two witnesses to happen before the 70th Jubilee. And if the flight were to happen in the fall feast, like in 2 days from now, or in 10 days from now, or 15 days from now, then there would be a 6-month time period between the ending of the 1,260 days until the 70th Jubilee of Yom Kippur 2025. So if it starts in fall festivals, the 1,260 would end before the spring festivals of 2025, and then you have to wait for the fall festivals, 6 months for the fall festivals of Yom Kippur 2025 to happen in the fall. So there's going to be like a 6-month period in between there, but this also allows for the 1,335 days to also happen in this time period of these 4 years, and a lot more other stuff that needs to happen possibly before the year of Jubilee comes. So that's just something to consider. This video is long enough, and I can provide some more end-time scenarios that fit the year of Jubilee. But the most important thing is to recognize that a lot of our end-time scenarios, our end-time paradigm is incorrect, and now we need to revise it to the facts of the year of Jubilee is either going to be Yom Kippur 2023, Yom Kippur 2024, or Yom Kippur 2025. I'm kind of leaning to the Jubilee period of 2025, but who knows right now? I don't know exactly for certain, but this at least provides those scenarios to play out. But who knows how these scenarios are going to play out until exactly we see them. So again, the Jubilee cycle has been restored. I'm going to be providing links to those spreadsheets in the description, video description. And again, here are the 3 possible year of next Jubilee years, which is going to be the 70th Jubilee, which is going to be when the kingdom of heaven comes to earth. I'm hoping that you're blessed by the information in this video, and I'm signing off, and shalom to all my brothers and sisters in Messiah Yeshua who have his testimony and guard his commandments. Shalom to you.